Hey, what's up, everybody? It's me, Danae, and I'm here with a special moon message for you. Now, today is October 28th. As promised, if you watched my message yesterday, I said that more than likely I would come back and give a more clear and concise moon message. I kind of touched on it a bit. And I didn't really even mean to, but Spirit guided me to do that in the last message, which I also think was very significant for the time. So surely tap into that if you haven't already. And thank you all that continue to watch and engage, as you feel moved to do so. Now, today, of course, for anybody that, isn't familiar with messages such as this, I will for sure timestamp. It'll both be posted in the comments and then stamped on the videos to separate the full moon message from the full moon reading. So I will be pulling cards after I finish, giving my spiel on the moon alignment as it is. So, full moon, this is a full moon lunar eclipse in Taurus, okay? Now, Taurus is the second house of personal finances, material possessions, and the concept of value, also ruled by Venus, as we know, the planet Venus. So this is the hunter's moon, which by native traditions ultimately signaled an impulse to start to prepare for the impending winter season. As humans, it comes almost all too natural to measure our value and our security through our material world. Taurus, again ruled by Venus, influences us to consider quality over quantity. This eclipse is finalizing the fate of what's been an almost 2-year cleansing cycle, scrubbing the psyche of dirt and scum to render your designer threads, so to speak, i.e. divine destiny, to be ready to wear. Now, here are a few dates to consider of the past eclipse cycles that have ultimately led us to this very moment in time. So listen to these dates, jot them down, and, reflect as you will. November 19th, 2021, April 30th, 2022, May 16th, 2022, October 25th, 2022, November 8th, 2022, and this year, May 5th, 2023. So reflect as best you can. Look through your notes, your pics, videos, emails, messages, wherever you think there might be a trace of evidence for those dates, where you were. Think about where you were during those times and what was the centric focus of your life. You might be surprised to see a common theme amongst those time frames. Hopefully, you'll even be pleasantly surprised at your rate of growth from the start of that time to now. Perhaps the value of people, places, and things in your life has changed significantly throughout that timeline. That realization may just be crystallizing to your conscious mind clearly now, since a lot of the transformations that were occurring were actually quite covertly subconscious. You may or may not have seen fit to make actual adjustments to your material world in any aggressive attempt to forge actual change. And that's because, let's be honest, many of the key components in our lives that came up for review were the hardest to confront, let alone to cancel out as need be. It called for an almost total reconditioning of our ideals of comfort, safety, and security in the most practical and fantastical aspects of our lives. So what we couldn't do for ourselves, the good old universe, in many ways now, has done for us, slowly but surely, over the past couple years at least, maybe more. If we've been, consider this, that we've been in a washing machine all this time, right? This eclipse moment now is like the spin cycle that wrings the garments clean of the excess water. Any moment of the excess water, any moment now, the washer is going to stop and the clothes will be primed to dry. Now, what you decide to do from that point is up to you. You may hang them up or hang them out. You may put them in a dryer. Hell, you may actually wear them wet. I don't know what you're into. But hopefully the dirt and the grime of the last wear, the last season, the last cycle, perhaps even the last lifetime, has all come out in the wash. And they, aka you, are almost as clean as new by now, to not only look the part of a high value human, but to actually be one on the inside out. Remember, it's quality of life over quantity in life. As they say, clothes don't make the man, right? Man makes the clothes. So get ready to be dressed in the success that you've already possessed, okay? So that's the moon message for today. Full moon lunar eclipse in Taurus happening around 4 something today. It's much earlier than that now, but hopefully the video posts before then. You know how YouTube is. I decided, or I should say I was guided to take a more figurative approach to the message today. There are many aspects that I'm going to mention really quickly that are impacting and affecting this eclipse quite significantly, but it was almost too much to really get into, and I felt I was guided into more of a figurative concept of this time, you know, with Taurus being that of material possessions and value and concepts of and you know, personal possessions and things of that nature. You know, if you think about the Taurus energy, they definitely like the finer things in life. They'll spend the money on, you know, the designer before they have a couple designer pieces before they have a closet full of Fashion Nova, or, you know, I don't know, Target, or, you know, something cheap or whatever, fast fashion, I should say. Not to be cheap, because I love Target now, so I'm no shade, but that's the difference in the aspect of a Taurus energy cosmically, and maybe perhaps another sign such as, you know, someone a little bit more frugal, like maybe Virgo, I would say, is a little bit more practical. So in this time, it's encouraging us to really consider the quality of like almost a makeover of the quality of our lives. It's already been happening, but now it's like the execution, like considered a big reveal of that makeover. So we're talking about your relationships, we're talking about your mindset, we're talking about your habits, we're talking about your actual material possessions, you know, the things that you subscribe to or invest in, and the things that you allow to be an expression of you. You know, it's all about cultivating something that is worth the value that you assign to it as some great deal. And of course, the assignment is ultimately determined by you, even more so than it is whatever the source, the origin of the thing is, right? It's you determining that factor. But there are some aspects that I want to mention. So just for those that care, you know, I feel like I should say this, but ultimately the gist of the message is what it is as it stands. So tomorrow, Mars and Mercury will be conjunct in Scorpio. Now, well, they're already in, Mars and Mercury are already in Scorpio, but tomorrow they'll actually be in conjunction. Now, today, the two planets are opposing Jupiter, which is retrograding in Taurus. And then let's not forget that Saturn is still in retrograde in Pisces, and it's going to be going direct in on November 4th. talk about a spin cycle. It's a lot of energy going on, mixing around. Like, how at the end of that point of the machine, of that cycle, it starts, especially the older ones, maybe not the more modern ones, but it starts to become a little bit more loud. It might rattle or shake or move around. And that's how you kind of almost know it's coming to a close. Well, take that as you will, for that to be the cosmic energy that we're all, in the midst of as it stands now, but govern yourself accordingly with the highest mindset. And that's hence why I've been preaching to protect your energy unapologetically, be careful where you go, who you connect with, so on and so forth. And most importantly, don't be afraid to rest. Don't resist rest at this time. Do so as much as possible, as much as your lifestyle can allow, because really there's no harm or no foul in allowing your body during a full moon phase to regenerate as much as possible, especially in such an intense cosmic climate such as this, where there's much I could say about the elements and the alignments as they are, but for the most part, we get to go with the flow. You get to bunker down, keep your thoughts and your vibrations, your outlook, your prospects in the highest frequency. Go with the flow of the universal order. Don't try to backpedal against it or forge your way ahead. Allow yourself to go flow with the current of what is now. And whether you like it or not, full moon energy is about rest, rejuvenation, and reflection. So as much as you may want to force a forward motion in any way, shape, or form, it's not going to relent to your persistence unless it's the timing for it to do so. So if you're receiving a significant, now we do have the bull in the midst of this energy with this new moon, this full moon being in Taurus, and we know that there's a certain persistence and insistence that comes with that bull energy, stubbornness, dare I say. So you can receive that as you will, let your discernment lead you accordingly as to those things that you may need to give a little bit more pushback against. But from my perspective, the pushback to me is more so against those things that might interfere with the flow. So it's not just like pushback on anything that comes in your way, like, I'm going to do it, like the bull in the china shop, just out of control, tearing everything up, It's about really pushing back on those energetic frequencies that are looking to be in opposition to the flow as it is expressing itself through you naturally. So those things that are pushing back, telling you, you shouldn't be resting right now, or you need to go conquer some great task, or make sure something gets done, or start something new, because time is a ticking. And especially during lunar eclipses, sometimes we can feel the incitement to make life or death decisions, as if everything is riding on something in the most urgent way. And yes, a lot of changes are occurring. I mean, consider the elements with Saturn still retroing in Pisces. That's the last sign in the zodiac. And Scorpio, we're in Scorpio season with Mars, the planet of war, and Mercury, the planet of communication, in that deep, dark underworld of also of beginnings and of death and rebirths. Jupiter, the more expansive, luck-giving planet, in retrograde in Taurus, but ultimately kind of taking a more of a regressive look back into those aspects that I talked about, like how your natural life has ultimately been expressing itself of the highest value up until this point. It's almost a reflective perspective more than it is an objective to power ahead, and especially with any favor, as Jupiter likes to lend. Now, it does offer a sense of what do we call it, like a higher mind or perspective, and what's the word for Jupiter? optimism, so that you can have that spirit of optimism on your side to support these transits and these elements that may feel a little bit challenging in some regards. And it's only because, like I said, it's ringing out the process here. It's like when you wring out those clothes and how that washer starts to rattle, shake, rattle, and roll, and you consider even washing by hand, and you're wringing out that excess water, that dirt and grime, and now rendering the garment fresh, clean, and new, right? We're releasing a lot of what we didn't even know we were cleaning out over these past couple years. That was the most significant thing that I learned in my research about this particular moon, is how far back we were stretching. This is like the culmination from that beginning point where I said November 19th, 2021. That's almost 2 years ago. And yesterday I had said that I thought I had intended to do the moon message yesterday, but something delayed me, and I said it must be that I need some more information. I need to connect more deeply with it so that I can deliver it, as holistically as I'm supposed to. Other people might have their own interpretation, but now I understand. It was for me personally to understand what's coming to a close, a culmination, a finality. November in 2021, just in my own personal life, was a very significant time for me. And then to see, the trek of the dates that followed for the other eclipses, was kind of astonishing for me, because I could pinpoint significant change happening at every single stop along that journey, and some in between as well, but certainly along that dotted line. So you have to consider that it's like I said, you've been getting clean. Your psyche's been getting cleaned out, and your waking life has too, but a lot of it's been happening more covertly under the surface in the psyche. Hence, where we are now on this Taurus Scorpio axis, lunar axis as it is, and we've been there for a while now. As a matter of fact, I think we've been there since, I want to say, January, either of this year or last. As a matter of fact, it's been a while that I can't remember what I read, that we've been on that axis for a while. But even stretching back to 2021, like I said, consider all of that toxicity, trauma that you've been dredging through, and that was just the cleaning cycle, and under the surface, in the subconscious, in the psyche. That has nothing on the fact that you've been encountering it. It's been building up beyond that point, perhaps for your entire life, at least for the past decade or so, So there's a lot to be released, a lot to come out in the wash, as I like to say, and it's all coming out in the wash. So prepare yourself for things to be revealed to you, some truths, some confirmations, affirmations of yourself, of your surroundings, of who you have connected yourself with, of associations in your life. Like, everything is kind of coming out now, so that, as I said, you are ultimately being dressed for the success of your future, which is now, your future being your present at this point. So consider it a present of the universe, from the universe, for you to be made clean, washed clean, almost a baptism of sorts, in a sense. It's just been a very extensive, extended baptism. You've been under that water for a long time. And, now you're coming up, a new creature, some fresh and new. Now it's up to you, just like it is with baptism. You could walk into your old life just the same if you decide to. But when you consider baptism, it's supposed to be like a proclamation of your new mindset, your new identity being, washed clean of old cycles that more or less kept you bound or beholden to a lifestyle or an identity that just didn't really suit your highest or your most supreme self, as I'm trying to recondition myself to say. And like I said, you could get out of that water and go back to doing everything you were doing before, and you would be within your right to do so. You could take those clothes out the washer and roll them right back in the mud, if you want. You could take yourself out of certain environments, or have taken yourself out of certain environments with certain people, doing certain things, thinking certain concepts about yourself, possessive of certain materials, or even obsessed with them. You could come out of that cycle and go right back into that state of mind, go right back into that energy if you choose to. And then it's kind of like, well, what was it all for, really? What really changed to do all that work on the inside and still make the same commitment, more or less, that has sullied your spiritual nature on the outside? It's like a waste of a wash, if you feel me. It's like when you wash your clothes, but you realize the water was rusted, so you got to wash them all over again. Or God forbid, if you ever done this, washed your clothes and left them in the washing machine too long, just left them sitting there, and they start to get that mildew smell because they need to dry, they need to air out, and then you got to wash them all over again. Nobody wants to repeat a cycle that you've already come clean from, you've already emerged from, whole, complete, healed, pristine, just as new, to just go right back in the machine all over again. Nah, it's time for us to shake those garments out. Like I said, let them air dry, let them dry in the dryer, put them on. Feel like the new being that you are, because everything on the inside is new. It's just taking us the consciousness, that Mercury placement as it is with Mars and in Scorpio, like all together now. It's all coming together now for us to be conscious of the changes that have been occurring to some degree without our knowledge, and in many cases without our full understanding and awareness. Now we have all the intel, more or less, what's been under the surface, what's been right in front of our face, behind the veil, what's been front stage and center whole time. And now we get to express ourselves within that truth accordingly. Okay, so take it easy on yourself. Be graceful with yourself, yourself through this transit. It's still Halloween season, so there's a whole different vibration attached to this than it would be in any other time. And everybody's having an experience in their own regard, so be graceful with others. All you can do is protect your energy with no inhibitions. You can't change anyone or impose any ideal or way of being on anyone else and how they choose to weather this cosmic flow. You just have to do what you can do and what's best for you to make sure that you feel safe and secure in spirit and in truth. The rest will handle itself. All right, so that's that on that. We're done with the full moon lunar eclipse message. Have a great one. And now let's get into this full moon lunar eclipse reading. Let's see what we got here. I almost took all those, as a matter of fact. Okay. We got the Fool and the Tower. To be honest, like, how did that come out? I think it might be this way, how they turned over and I pushed them this way. It could be interchangeable. It could be walking into or walking out of. So I'll keep it this way, but I really think that usually I position them the opposite way, depending on based on how it came out. When I look back on it, I'll be able to know like exactly how they fell, but nothing's coincidence, right? So we got the Full, New Beginnings, and we got the Tower card, which is about, okay, and we got the World card here, and Magician. Yeah, we're talking about new beginnings here and manifesting some new outcome. perhaps having manifested, having co-created this manifestation with source, for this new beginning, and there be impending, shocking or sudden changes on the board, but you being in a position to ultimately to make the most of the outcome. Now, this could also be the adverse energy between those that have successfully completed this life cycle that I've been speaking about. If you perchance didn't watch the moon message, I definitely encourage you to do so. But that have completed successfully these cycles of life, this particularly the last one, and are in the space of a new beginning, moving ahead faithfully, maybe perhaps averting some life-changing moments that may present themselves to be a detriment to your comfort, and your security. And the adverse energy of that are those that perhaps maybe manipulated their ways through these past life cycles in a less high vibrational way, or let's just say in a lower high vibrational way. And these are the experiences that are occurring in the adverse, like less of a faithful move ahead forward and more of a start over, which I spoke about not wanting to have to like redo a cycle that you've already completed. I likened it to a washing cycle because I said that that's pretty much what we've been in for the past couple of years at least, where our psyche, our subconscious, our internal natures have been kind of scrubbed clean in many ways, in a covert way that we didn't even realize. And now we're merging. See how she's stepping out of this world card here, like out of this cycle and into a new one as a new creature, fresh, ready for new possibilities, ready to take on the world, in faith and in fortitude from past experiences that in some regards have been quite shocking and tumultuous in nature. But it was the process of that cycle, like how you allowed yourself to be cleansed. Did you fight against the cycle? Did you try to cut it short? Did you add more dirt and grime to it than was necessary? Like, that's the manipulation aspect, the darker version of the magician. Or did you do as much as you could in the positive aspect with what you were given? Maybe there were a lot of different moments in your life that weren't quite as settled and didn't feel as secure. Maybe you had to start over quite a bit, it seemed, over the past few years, maybe decades or so. But each and every time you got up and you made the most of whatever your resources at hand were, without any lower vibrational intention or motivation otherwise, especially to be an infringement on anyone else's washing cycle or anyone else's process, so to speak. You just stayed focused on your own and weathered the storms as they came about, weathered the experiences that maybe sometimes cleared the board, and in some regards made you feel like you were left with nothing. The tower, so it clears everything sometimes for you to build on a more fortified foundation. But it's about your perception and your perspective of your circumstance as to how you get to rebuild or reemerge, and in this case, within this season, how you get to be reborn. Many of us have experienced spiritual deaths many times over in some ways. Some of us didn't even know that that's what we were encountering. We just felt like it was a tower, like we were being tossed to and fro. And in fact, it was a spiritual death for the purposes of rebirth, like the scorpion energy does rise from the ashes like the phoenix into a new being. This is ultimately what's happening to us. We're rising with a new power and authority in a new cycle with new possibilities and an authority to ultimately wield our brand of magic in an even more liberated way than we have before, with much less limitations, but for sure with even greater responsibility. So it matters just as much now than it did even back then, that knowing all, with all the intel that you have now and all the experience, that you wield that force of magic manifestation with wisdom. You know, consider Taurus season, it can be, you can definitely get caught up in the you know, the temptation to be overindulgent. You know, Taurus loves a delicacy. He loves the delicacies of life, as a matter of fact. Good food, fine clothing, luxuries of life, you know, the finer possessions. It's very material based. And as humans, of course, you know, we just naturally, innately, no matter what sign you are, more or less measure ourselves by our possessions and our security by our material measurement. But it's most beneficial to manage those projections and those expectations wisely, lest we manifest the adverse of our temptations, which is disharmony even within ourselves. You know, and ultimately that power of manifestation can be less of a blessing and more of a curse if we're overindulging or overstepping our bounds against the lines of our own integrity. You know, we've been given a certain power and authority to manifest for productive purposes and for the purpose of prosperity, but not for the purposes of greed, is what I'm saying, or to be an infringement on anything else, or an influence outside of ourselves that is not one that is of light and of love and of luxury. You know, if there's some limitation or some oversight in any of that regard, then more or less, you know, maybe there's still some washing that needs to get done that didn't quite come out in the past cycle. I kind of likened it to, in the end of my moon message, of when you wash all the clothes but you leave them in the washing machine and they start to smell like mildew, or you wash the clothes and something didn't quite come out, so you have to put it back in again. At this point, we've learned enough, we've grown enough, we've evolved enough to know what certain lusts of life lead us to, you know, whether they lead us to a holistic experience of a quality of life, or they veer us into more the obsessive possessive energy of the quantities in life, where we're looking to measure ourselves by what we can sensationalize and less by what we spiritualize, what we express from our innate spiritual nature, you know, our organic life force. Those are the things that are truly of value, invaluable, as a matter of fact, immeasurable by anything external. And everything is attracted from that organism, you know, from that working and being kempt for, you know, for the most part, in the most pristine what am I trying to say? The most pristine, damn it, you know what I'm trying to say, pristine condition. Good Lord, come on. Sometimes I just be flowing, and sometimes it's like, the most pristine condition possible. You may not even like to wash your clothes. Maybe you're a dry cleaner. You know, me personally right now, I don't have anything too fancy that needs to be dry cleaned, but when I do, and when I did, and when I will, I absolutely am more careful about how I handle those garments. You know, I'm particular about how they're cared for. Some things don't get washed as much. Some things do get dry cleaned. And one thing about me is, even with the garments that I have now, I do hang dry a lot of things, particularly that I don't want to shrink, because there's more longevity there. So consider all of those figurative concepts when I'm speaking about ultimately keeping your spirit in pristine condition. You know, it's not about the material at all. You know, I'm talking about your spirit nature being the highest value of you. All right, so we're moving into new world cycles. It's inevitable, and you know, here's that controlling force that, and it could be you. You know, let's see what comes up. You taking control, responsibility, having self-control and vision over the affairs of your life. You know, really governing yourself. Yeah, well, okay, and here's that too. So let's see here. We got the King of Wands and the Emperor. That's really okay. So is this a one or the other, or is this a collective force is what I'm considering? Because we got the King of Wands, who's extremely creative. Yes, okay, so taking control over your creative force, like I said, and being in the position to ultimately and yeah, definitely with the Magician too, because the new world order is one in which we do become more sovereign in spirit and in truth. And when I'm speaking about sovereignty, it's not meaning, you know, a disconnection from source. Quite the opposite. It's the co-creativity, knowing that source works within you, and less of a codependency. So we've been conditioned to more or less defer our independence and our governing to outside forces, whether they be people, places, or things. I'm not even just speaking about, you know, the empire, so to speak, you know, the powers that be in control as they present themselves to be so. It's whatever you give precedence in your life, whatever you assign the highest value to and control over you. We're shifting in that cycle now, taking our power back, reclaiming our time, reclaiming our life force, and taking more responsibility and accountability for the creativity in our lives. The King of Wands is representative of a creative, an unlimited creative power in some regard, because he is the most creative king of them all, you know, of all the kings. The Emperor is the one that has the most power. So the two in alignment definitely speak to like a supreme source and force of creativity, manifestation, you setting your sights on something and not being impaired or inhibited to bring it to life in whatever way the universe supports you to do so. You know, the King of Wands is very ambitious. He almost don't need permission from nobody to go after what he wants. He moves by way of his passion. And then the Emperor is the most, you know, supreme being in the deck, and who's telling him what to do, you know? So those two energies synergizing together and in the masculine form are ultimately what we're being called to exercise, masculine or feminine. You're given permission and authority to call the shots in your material world, to create something ideal, you know, to be controlling in some regard of the objectivity of your creative force, whatever you perceive to want to bring to life, having no inhibitions or feeling no shortage of courage or confidence to make it to be so, if that makes sense. All right, this is supreme manifestation power here, man. That's amazing. Let me get into this a second more, because the Tower. Yeah, I feel like it probably was the Tower that really should have been here more than anything. I don't know. I guess it really doesn't matter. But for me, directions in the cards do matter, because, like I said, for a lot of us, the jolt or the shock and awe of life is what ultimately, okay, that makes sense. When I look back over, you know, I gave a timeline if you didn't catch the moon message before this. I gave a timeline of the different eclipses that have made an impact on our lives up until now in different unique ways, of course. But I encourage you to go back and check those dates, of since November 19th, 2021 up until the eclipse cycles till now. This is like the culmination of that. But along the way, in a lot of ways, it's been quite disruptive to our natural world. At least that was when I look at my evidence, like the cold hard facts of what was going on in my life during that time. I mean, I could have glazed over it and considered that, but when I actually look at the dates, it's like, wow, that's interesting, And it all, and what I definitely took away from it is that from the beginning to now, I became more intentional about how I manifest, even by as practical as me expressing more of myself in this regard more consistently than I did before. Like I was expressing myself through tarot and even some aspects of astrology through moon messages and things of that sort, more on other platforms than on YouTube per se, i.e. Instagram and through Facebook, secondarily. But I wasn't as committed to the communion and the communication between myself and source and the universe, holistically, to really get into how the universe, I always say it now, it was speaking to me and through me. When I look back at that timeline for myself, I saw the evolution of how it became just kind of like a matter of fact type of thing, like, oh, I'm going to do a moon message. And, I gather a few thoughts and ideas and express them in the way that I that I felt guided to now where I more embody the message. I see the evidence of that evolvement, that evolution of how I really embody these concepts and these transits, and they almost play out for me in foresight in a lot of ways, to the point where, like yesterday is evidence of it. I didn't feel prepared to do a moon message because I hadn't really looked at all the aspects yet. I like to take a look at everything and then surmise and make, to summarize it in my special way as to how I can personalize that experience, But yesterday it just kind of like came out, and it wasn't really much that I could do to resist it. And then it ended up being solidified with the cards in a sense as well. So even that evidence right there shows to me that subconsciously I've been more connected over this time frame to universal ordinance and more in communion with the universal aspects than I could have even realized consciously. Subconsciously the work's been getting done. And even as I just been going through the motions, like building content and sharing it accordingly, doing readings, and lo and behold, it actually aligns with the planetary alignment. Now it's a much more conscious motivation and intention. Like, I know that I can speak to the elements, and I know that there's evidence in my life as to how they're truly playing out in real time. And that's just a small example of how I've seen the evolution of myself over, in the grand scheme of things. That's a 2-year period that really isn't all that great, but it's packed a big punch. And the acceleration of your psyche that you, like I said, because it's not been on the surface, it's not been more overt, it kind of has been undermined, downplayed, or even just taken for granted or overlooked in some way. Any of those things or all of those things, truly for me. So now seeing yourself, it's like, like you're getting to experience yourself literally. I just heard like the emperor's new clothes. and really he was naked, right? That's the interesting part of that story, is that he thought he had on, these these fresh new clothes, that I forget the trickery that really happened, but ultimately he was naked. And I feel like there's a synergy here with that in a great way, because where we probably have been trying to put on more layers, to add more value to ourselves in some way, shape, or form, all the while spirit was stripping us down, stripping off the things deep within the surface that weren't adding value to us at all, that were actually holding us back, chipping away at our highest value, depreciating our supreme self, unbeknownst to us in many ways. And then it almost left us naked. Like, consider, in a practical sense, from 2021, I went from having a very illustrious closet that I was very proud of and loved very much. I say it all the time, I'm not ashamed. My son is in the second house, so I have no shame in really valuing clothes. I don't necessarily lust over high name brands or designer items and things like that, but I do take great esteem in the quality of how I present myself. So there's that. And then I have a whole lot of Libra energy as well, as I've said, so that adds value to that as well, the aesthetic of my presentation. To now where, like I said, I love Target, and I didn't not love it before, but I went from one brand of clothing that, I loved very much, to now, I just really have the basics. And at this present moment, I just really have the basics that matter most to me, that have quality enough, but is not particularly anything to write home to mom about, that can be washed, most of the things, even if I hang them up. And, it stripped me down in a lot of ways from not wanting to necessarily be, to having multiple options that I could mix and match. Because I never really been one where I'm like, oh, I don't want to take a picture in that. I've never been like that either. But I've always been able to cultivate a closet where I've had enough items where I could mix them and match them, and more or less create an illusion of a greater wardrobe than I actually have, because I was creative enough to think of different combinations. Whereas to now, I don't really have that luxury too much. Like, if you've seen one thing, you've seen it already, and it's sustainable as it is for the lifestyle that I have at this moment. But it's not what it was, is what I'm trying to say. But at the same time, where my wardrobe may have depreciated in value or in options or variety, I should say, my spirit, it's luxurious. Okay, like I've found less value in how I present myself, and wanting to be all put together and pristine, have the perfect outfit for the perfect affair, and this and that, to caring more about how I express myself day to day, how I present the most precious aspects of me, my truth, how I honor how I honor the sanctity of my spiritual nature from the inside out and from the outside in. I care more to be perceived as something fabulous for the exhibition of my soul than I do the expression of my style at this point. Now, it's not to say, because you just wait, the style videos are coming back, because that is my heart's desire. I love style and I love expressing it from a spiritual point of view, because I do believe that, the two are in synergy. How you express yourself externally is a direct reflection of how you feel internally in a great regard. But I would say that there was probably more of an imbalance in that expression when I was going through more darker times in my life that I didn't even know I was going through, when there was still a lot of cleansing and cleaning that needed to happen on the inner workings of me, Whereas from the outside looking in, you would be none the wiser. I just always look put together. And to me, looking in the mirror, I was none the wiser in a lot of ways, because I didn't even know that some of the grime and the mold and the grit in my subconscious and my psyche was attached to the walls, like it was it had built up over time to the point where I needed universal cleansing assistance to really be purified. And I'm thankful for it. So I've spoken about this before. When I had my great awakening, it was a big plunge into my psyche, and I was decided to get rid of everything, all my clothes, all luxurious possessions, shoes, bags, literally cleaned out my entire closet down to the clothes on my back, had to order basic clothes from Walmart just to sustain myself. Same for my son, because I don't do anything for myself spiritually or naturally that I don't do for him. And that was the incitement, the directive that I got in the spirit, which ultimately saved my life in truth. I don't believe I would be alive today having not been obedient to that direction back then, not even realizing why it was entirely necessary, because I was bargaining in the spirit, like, well, maybe I could just get rid of the stuff that I didn't buy, or that's old, or that's this. Like, I was making all types of concessions, and spirit was like, okay, you still want to hold on to some things, eh? Well, let's see how that works out for you. And I was like, oh, okay, all right, no, I cleaned it all out. And even in that moment, I knew it was purposeful, but I just had no idea the impact that it would make, and how it would sustain my actual life force for now 2 years later, almost about 2.5 years later from the moment that I had that experience, that the spirit need to cleanse my palate from, the distractions of value that I was objectifying through material possessions, through material things, through aesthetic expression, so that I could really see the truth of my internal possessions, not just what was terribly wrong with me, most of which I had, no responsibility for and no account for in the same regard, but also what was terribly right with me, righteous, as a matter of fact, because it was all kind of mixed up in there in one cycle, all the grit, the grime, the good, the bad, the ugly. I really couldn't tell what was what, because it was all so deep rooted that, it was hard to really decipher. So getting rid of the distractions on the outside is what helped me see most clearly within. To now, I'm so pristine. At least I feel that way on the inside. Not to say I don't still have work to do, honey, because I'm not trying to say that. But the things that I know, a lot of the dirtiest aspects of me that I didn't even know were there have been purified a great deal to make room for those beautiful things to flourish, to really take over, to take up more space, and in my psyche, and then pour out from my psyche into my consciousness, into my creativity, more intentionally, more fluidly, more at my command and demand than they did before, because before I had all types of things going on under the surface that was holding that creativity back, holding it at bay, keeping me out of the control of my own creative consciousness. Someone else had control over it. Some other thing, some other energy was taking possession of that. So it's, the tower moment for me was releasing all of those energies. And I had a couple others along the way that were cleansing in their own right. But what it afforded me was supreme sovereignty, as it's still developing. Not saying I've totally arrived, but that's the intention. So as long as my sights are set on that intention, that's what I will continue to cultivate. And there's nothing that can shift that mindset at this point. That's where my sights are set. And so that is what it is and what it shall be. So again, taking your power back from the depths and darks and shadows and eighth house energy, as I've spoken about before, that Scorpio vibration, where we sometimes the place where we are afraid to go, where no man's gone before, where only we can go with the support of spirit to guide us into that dark night of the soul, as it's called. It's not pretty a lot of times. It can be a scary place. It can be shocking. But guarantee you, like, once you've had that confrontation with the depths of yourself and the death of who you thought you were, who you've been conditioned to be. Yep, dark night of the soul, right here. Nine of Swords, pardon me. Once you've had, oh, damn. Wow, y'all saw that. So I ain't even gotta say nothing. Once you've had that experience, this is how you come out. Wholly and complete. Healed, in divine alignment. You're not afraid of the dark anymore, not even the depths of who you are. You shake hands with your shadow. You see here this pillow of dark and light on one accord, because it is all a part of you. Even the things that I have discovered that are unfavorable, I don't denounce those experiences. I don't reject that reality, because if it wasn't for that, even the worst of times, the moment when I threw away all of my stuff and, had nothing more to show for it, and lost a lot of friends, disconnected from family, didn't have a steady income that made me feel sustainable and secure in my basic needs and foundation, and didn't know how I was going to have Christmas for my son. Like, those were the darkest moments that I faced, and coming out realizing that it wasn't really about any of that when it all came down to it. It was about my divine alignment and the value that I was measuring myself of. Does it really matter if you have a nice outfit to go to? Does it matter if you can say that you have friends to go out with? Does it make or break your life to have family to call when you're down to your last dime? Does it matter to have toys and presents, or even have a tree? How about that? Because in 2021, I ain't have no tree or no presents. And my son and I still had a wonderful Christmas. That was the year that changed the trajectory of my perception of material things, because we enjoyed our day all day with good food that I bought with my EBT card. Thank God I had one to buy with, music that we listened to in the Christmas spirit, baked cookies. We enjoyed each other's company. We ain't go to no family's houses, and ain't nobody come to ours, and we had a fantastic day. And on a day that's supposed to be measured by what you can give and receive, what we found the value in was the exchange of our pure love and appreciation for each other. And him more than me, because he taught me. I was struggling more that day by just the sheer inability to give him the Christmas that I had been able to give him before, and thankfully was able to give him the year after. That hurt me more than it could have ever hurt him. I'm sure of it, to the point where this past Christmas, when I made mention of that memory, he didn't even remember it. He was like, "Why do you keep saying that? I don't remember that." And I was like, "Well, I will never say it again. Thank you, God, that you don't remember, because I will never forget." And although it still has made a great impression, maybe even a stain on my psyche in some ways, I can look back and reflectively and see how we've grown even since then, and see, like, we've evolved in such a way that none of it matters. All that matters is the grace and the gratitude that we have for life itself, And when you have that, when you can cultivate that type of spirit, especially being able to cultivate it in him at an early age, that's the wealth, that's the value, that's the pure gold. That energy of transmutation is worth more than anything you could lay your eyes or hands or feet or body in of. None of it. That's the value of life, the quality of life right there, to be able to literally take whatever you have, maybe not much, maybe unfavorable circumstances, maybe not the most positive outlook, maybe no vision at all as to what the future may hold, but whatever it is right now, you're going to take it and you're going to make something of it. That cultivation, going through that dark night, some of those darkest moments, having no one to call, feeling a bit isolated, a bit, disconnected from the world, let alone any comforts of my life that I had, conditioned to rely on before that, is what ultimately raised me into the supreme status that the high priestess projects, where all that matters is your spiritual truth, your divine alignment, and you being grounded in the integrity of how you feel energetically guided to express yourself. That's the basis of the high priestess. It's really not as much religious as it is energetically sound, spiritual at least, but definitely not stringent upon or contingent upon any religious practice per se. Anybody can embody, man or woman can embody the energy of the high priestess, because it speaks to you being open and willing channel to receive the intel of from intangible spaces, from supreme sources, and it then becomes a part of you, and that intel takes root, by way of the seed that's implanted of you, and before you know it, it is you. You become that supreme source, the reflection of that force, and you become a supreme force and a reflection of that source, embodied in real time. You become the value of spirit, immeasurable by any tangible person, place, or thing. That's it. That's what it's about right there. And this experience, even this eclipse cycle, culminating all of this cleansing, this is a pure energetic being here. Think about like a nun, so to speak, or Mother Mary, that pristine image that you have. Just the imagery. You don't have to believe in anything of the sort, but the imagery of that nature, something that is to be reverenced, to be appreciated, to be sanctified in some way, shape, or form, to be held with high regard and honor and respect. That's who you are emerging to be, or have emerged to be, out of all the grit, the grime, the misfortune, the unfortunate, the discontentment, resentment, resistance, obstruction, destruction. It's all come out in the wash, and here you are, just like new. That's you. All right. So no matter how much, as I said in the moon message, the machine starts to shake by way of these cosmic alignments. It might shake, rattle, and roll a bit, as that final spin cycle does when it's just about done. Just know it's just about done. You're at the end. The most of it is far behind you, and any minute now, you're going to be able to pull them clothes and do as you will with them. As I said, dry them, hang them, wear them, iron them out, shake, whatever it is that you feel called to do. It's your choice to adorn yourself accordingly. As I said, being dressed in, not dressed for, but dressed in the success that you've already proven yourself to possess by way of this process. It's amazing, isn't it? Justice. And this is fair. It's all fair game. You've sown much, you've invested much of your time and energy, you've persisted in times and seasons and cycles that didn't make any sense for you to do so, where you couldn't potentially see your way out or forward. You didn't maybe even know why you were going through it at the present moment. But it was all happening for you. It was all in the favor of justice, for there to be harmony, for you to be delivered into a season of harmony and balance and fairness for all of your transgressions, or the dissatisfactory experiences that ultimately were shaping you, but because you weren't always privy to that knowledge and to that intel, it may have seemed unfair at times. It may have seemed like the universe was coming down on you, or God wasn't quite listening, or just society was beating you down, or it's the circumstances in your life were imbalanced. But the way that you persisted on that fool's journey, making the most out of what you had, no matter what life dished out to you, weathering every storm that came your way, living in self-control, even when you didn't feel like you had control, you kept control of yourself. You didn't create unfavorable circumstances for yourself any more than, to any detrimental cost to you or to anyone else. And in the darkest night, you still were able to perceive a brand new morning. You still got up to see a new day, thank God, And this is the justice that you get to experience in your life. Oh, man. Wow. And the highest for Taurus said, I need the money, though. F what you saying. Thank you, Taurus. We hear you. We got you. This is that energy right here. Like, wow, I feel emotional a bit. The most supreme gift. This is like the divine. I can't even speak right now, because it's like, it is material, but it's reflective, because it's like the reward for all that you've allowed the divine to cultivate in you. So yes, this is the external manifestation of prosperity of the highest potential, because this comes from a pure force, a pure source. This is not, what you conjure up in the earth, or even what you could work for, to be honest with you, like literally manually putting your hand to the plow. This is a reward that is magnified. To see this big old coin in this big old hand is magnified beyond your expectations, because of what you endured energetically. It's like it matches in some regard, even if you don't realize, because I get the sense that when you actually receive the totality of this reward, it's almost going to feel overwhelming. Like, all this for me? Like, what did I do to deserve this? Well, you hung in there. That's what you did. You stayed focused. You stayed in faith. You cultivated a foundation of fortitude no matter what. When that got knocked down, you built another one. You stayed patient. You were fair in all things. You operated in the truth of not only universal law and spiritual law, but also natural law. You didn't break any rules or, finesse any circumstances to get the upper hand for material gain. You did the best with what you had and believed and trusted that you would be supported for the rest. Believe that you would be sustained even in the times when you didn't feel like you had enough. And you were, obviously, if we've gotten to this point. And now you're about to see the reflection, magnified, mind you, of your value. You're about to be able to see it, materialize it, physically perceive just how valuable you are to the universe, just for being the example of someone that can successfully carry out this process in spirit and in truth, and do so with integrity and honor. you think the universe ain't wasn't watching, wasn't preparing to pay you what you worth and then some with interest? Most of what has been held back at this time, because kind of seemed like it's a long time coming, has been unjustifiable. Has been external interference, has been obstruction of justice. Really and truly, and in a physical way and in a figurative way, and that has only stood to magnify the gift even more. Like I said, with interest, it's like what you thought was being held back from you was ultimately just being increased. For every moment that you were supposed to, or you felt like anyway, because perhaps maybe that's not even the case, but there may have been moments where things were supposed to be released to you in one way, shape, or form, and something happened and it wasn't. For me, for instance, I was supposed to have been released unemployment, which was the biggest detriment to my finances, and it was released, then it was retracted, and then they actually tried to sue me to pay it back. It was just crazy, like the things that I was experiencing throughout the last couple of years. But like I said, it shifted my perspective to not depend on material gain, to depend on the sanctity of my spirit, to be in faith that I would never truly go without. I may not have had everything that I wanted, but I never have a hungry day. Never not had something to put on my son's back and myself, and shoes on our feet, and heat in our home, and electricity, and a roof over our head, and so on and so forth. And I found contentment in those things. And so such may be the same for you, that having the ideal to have more, but the grace and gratitude for what you possessed is what ultimately is affording you this great reward and award for your temperance throughout the process. It's like, I wish I could say it is the way that I feel it, but I hope that this pentacle is promising enough for you, not just to know that if it's not here within your possession already, that it most certainly is coming, and that it's a justified reward. This ain't just like, like, oh, let me just give you this. Like, all right. This is like, you may not see the reflection of, your heart, your soul, you're sowing for your harvest, but this is justified. This is fair. It's about the equal give and take. It's just that the spirit just has a way of rewarding us beyond our wildest dreams and imaginations. But we, to our credit, have a way of carrying out the mission of spirit and human form in a way that could never be conceptualized beyond the flesh. So it actually does balance out. Consider, like, as I like to say, like, we are the sensation of the spirit. It happens through our being, God and flesh. So just as hard of a task and a triumph as that is, us just doing it, not really realizing the feat that we are surmounting, is as much as the spirit wants to reward us. Like, you don't even know what you just did. You don't even know that just staying patient and maintaining kindness and consideration, even in the midst of your struggle, and grace and gratitude for the little bit that you had, and waiting on, for obstacles to surmount certain obstacles that maybe perhaps were never even due to you to surmount. You don't even know what all that means to the spirit. That's what the spirit is saying. Like, you don't even know what that means to me. Source is saying that. What great of a service you have done for the ancestral, the angelic realms, to bring that frequency of energy into the material 3D world, and to carry it with grace and with honor and dignity and respect, and be a beam of light and influence to others to know that they can do it too. Like, you don't even know how much that means to me, says Source. And now I'm going to show you. That's what Source said. Source said, you're going to see. You're going to see, you're going to feel, you're going to hear, you're going to taste the goodness of God. And I'm here for it. Come on. Come on, Spirit. Give it to me. Oh, all right. I'm done now. Thank you for listening and watching. Take it easy through this transit. You know, be graceful with yourself and others. The worst has definitely passed. So any little shakes and shimmers and jolts that you feel in this washer machine and this spin cycle is just par for the course, just wringing out that last little bit of dirty water, dirty grime, so that you can come out just like new in your emperor's new clothes, with your emperor's new attitude, and, you know, governing the kingdom that you are creating in that same regard, you know, fresh and so clean. All right. So enjoy yourself, enjoy this transit, be safe out there if you're moving about. And yeah, I'll catch you on the next one. Until then, peace.